Well, hello everyone. It's your girl Gabrielle. Welcome to a brand new episode of Hot Topics. This is the show where we talk real talk about things that are happening in employment, education, mental health, physical health, social services, finance, divorce. We've done episodes on budgeting. We've done episodes on being a child of divorce, a divorcee. We've done a plethora of episodes on ADHD. So this is the web series where people's life stories and people's knowledge, we use it to educate you. And today is no different. I am excited about this topic because uh, not only do we have a repeat topic, but we have a repeat guest. So that is so awesome. So let's get right to it. So we're bringing this topic back. The topic is talking with tutors. So we being under a step ahead tutoring services, we love to connect with other people in the tutoring industry as well. And today we are going to talk shop. We're going to talk about business expenses. We're going to talk about taxes. We're going to get right into it. So for anyone in the tutoring industry, and you need some guidance, this is for you. If you just want to know, this show is for you as well. So definitely get out your pen and paper and take notes. So we're going to talk to you about taxes and expenses and deductions, and we're going to get right into it. So I'm excited again because we have a repeat topic. I brought her back to the show. Her name is Jan Sixt, and I am going to remind you about who she is. So without further ado, who is Jan Sixt? Let me remind you about who she is. Have you tried to explain an assignment to your child only to find that your explanation wasn't understood? Did you lose your child's attention? Did both of you walk away frustrated? Were your child's needs still not met? Here comes jstutor.com, which is Jan's website. Over 1,200 educational videos for ages preschool through 12th grade for math, reading, language arts, writing, spelling, science, social studies, time management, standardized test taking, ESL, organizational, and study skills. Parents learn how to teach basic foundational concepts calmly and smoothly while helping with schoolwork. Homeschoolers follow a well organized curriculum that presents strategies and links videos that complement each other. Here are a couple of awards. From 2001 to present, Jan was a guest speaker at various seminars, workshops, PTA and PTO meetings, radio, public libraries, and other educational events. From 1969 to present, she's been inducted into Kappa Delta Pi, which is the International Honor Society in Education. And finally, Jan has been a teacher for over 45 years. That is a mouthful, you guys. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to bring her on. Hi, Jan. How you doing today?
Hello, Gabrielle. Doing well.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you for coming back to Hot Topics and coming back to the hot seat. And today you're going to educate us on taxes and deductions, and we're going to get into the nitty gritty of it all. All right, you ready?
I am.
All right, I'm going to hand over the baton. There's my hand. All right, and take it away.
Well, hello. Uh, I'm focusing tonight on uh, the, the income and the taxes for tutors and, and to try to explain to you the different business deductions and what we should be focusing on in our record keeping so we don't get stressed out at tax time. I'm going to, first of all, talk about business entities. Where there are different types of businesses, and I may have to read these to you. I don't think that my papers are looking really easy to read from here, but basically, taxes are paid by individuals or by businesses. A business in the idea of the IRS sees a business as a taxable entity as well. So there are different ways that you can organize your business. They're certainly interested in how much income you get and what the deductions are that would lower that income for tax purposes. So we're strictly talking about how the IRS views places where they have taxable entities. I'm not going to give you, I'm not an accountant, I'm not a tax lawyer. What information you'll need is kind of an overview of what is likely to be asked of you to produce as far as paperwork for a tax preparer. So if you have an understanding of what is on the forms that you might have to fill out, or what categories of expenses are deductible, you'll have a better opportunity to be able to discuss this intelligently with your tax preparer. The very first thing that you need to do is decide what tax entity you fall into. What is your business type? And I have listed several here. The first one is a sole proprietor. We also have a partnership as a business entity. There's one called international business, corporation, an S corporation, and a limited liability company. You've probably heard it with its initials, LLC. So the very first thing that you need to do is decide which of these categories you fit into. So let me give you a brief understanding of what it entails and where it's most likely you would fall into. Okay, the sole proprietorship is probably where most of us will fit. In this category, there's one owner, and it's an unincorporated business. So this particular sole proprietorship fills out a form that's called a Schedule C. This is a form that is attached to your 1040. So your personal tax return has another sheet that could go into it if you run a business of your own. The rest of these fall into tax entities that are separate from your personal tax return, even though some of the income can eventually end up in your personal tax return. But this particular one, the sole proprietorship, which I just showed you, would be filled out and put in with your 1040 or the personal tax return. The partnership has its own tax form. This one is a 1065, the number on this form, and I have my paperclip over it. So this form 1065 is the tax return that would be filled out for you if in fact you were registered as a partnership. The international business one is probably not going to be one that you're going to need to worry about. It has to do with foreign businesses having business activities within the United States, or a domestic business doing business in a foreign country. I don't think many of us are going to fall into this category, but it is a business type. The corporation is a legal entity that's separate and distinct from its owners. So the owner of a company would fill out a corporate return, and that one has the number 1120. That's an 1120 that an accountant would know these numbers. If uh, accountants speak to each other with these numbers. So the 1120 is your business portion of this would be filling out the 1120. See, my lighting is going back and forth here. And then you would also have to fill out your personal tax return. So the corporation has a tax return, and your personal 1040 is a tax entity. The S corporation is like a corporation, but its tax number is an 1120S. And the limited liability corporation, again, fills out a separate form for the government. So in a quick review, the sole proprietorship is a portion of the business is reported on your personal tax return. It's one of the less confusing ones. These have a form for the business itself, and then you would also have to fill out a 1040, the personal form, in the April 15th, in order to satisfy the personal part of it. I hope I didn't confuse you on that. It's accounting can be a little bit dry, but the people that know and love this stuff are just really very, very helpful to people like us who are just doing our thing with our own businesses. Okay, the reason that you are trying to decide what your business type is because you can think of these as maybe board games. Let's say we have 6 different board games that we could play. Each one of them has rules to go with how to play the game. Each one of these business types have rules that go with each of their reporting. And in the rules, there is certainly the main part of it is how much income did you make and what parts of it were expenses or deductible. But there's also other parts to it where you would have an advantage of perhaps a limited liability, where you might not, if you had a lawsuit filed against you, perhaps some of these business types would allow less invasiveness into your own personal assets and funds. Excuse me, there might be more advantageous ways to put away money for your own retirement in pensions and so forth. Some of these business types, it's easier to have employees or to make certain accommodations for their health insurance and so forth. So your unique situation depends on your unique circumstances. And that's not something that I could handle in a talk like this. I'm trying to give you an overview of what these different entities that they exist, and then give you the information where you could intelligently talk with a tax preparer or a tax lawyer. Your questions would be more on target, but the professional would be able to discern what you personally, which fit would be better for you personally.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jan, for that introduction. So are you able to talk about what would make someone be a sole proprietor as opposed to forming an LLC?
Yes, I can do that. They, like I said, those the type of business that you would select is determined by what your needs are and what your other assets are, what you know, just how complicated your own life is, where you're geographically where you are, perhaps. Because don't forget there that we're talking federal returns here. You're also going to have returns for whatever state you're in. So some of these business models are will one of them is going to be better for you than the others. So you're really going to need to speak to an actual professional to sift out which of the ones would be better. Although my guess is that most of us will fall in here into the sole proprietorship, which is one owner. If you have other owners in it, like you would in a partnership, then it gets a little more complicated. All of these businesses, uh, I'm not really sure about the international business one. I don't have a lot of information on that one. But these other ones allow you to have more owners. So if you were perhaps had several tutors that got together and you were running a business, perhaps someone in your company could do elementary students. Maybe someone else would do the middle school or high school, and some may be able to do the college curriculum. So you might team together and form a business. Then you would have to, how your circumstances would be different than just if you were a sole proprietor. But if you're starting out, the sole proprietor is probably where you'd be. And of course, that is just uh, a single sheet that goes into your personal tax return. So the simplicity here is quite remarkable. There's a lot of more accounting to the other uh, forms that you might have to fill out. However, now let me move on. When you are deciding what entity you fall into, you're going to have to have some identification. The IRS needs some identification to understand the business with a number. In our personal return and on the Schedule C, this for the sole proprietor, we only need our social security numbers. But for these other entities, when these businesses are formed, then the government asks you to get what's called an EIN. It's an employer identification number. I wouldn't do this before I talked to somebody that knew my personal situation. But when the time comes, the application for an EIN, an employer identification number, is pretty easy to get. You can uh, go online and get that tax ID number. And then that number is going to identify your particular business the same way as your social security number notifies the government that it is you. All right, so the tax ID number is issued by the IRS. I mentioned before that you can get it online. When you go to actually uh, sign up for one of these numbers, though, you have to do the complete process at one time. If you come back and go, I have to look that up, I'll have to do that later, it'll wipe out everything you've done so far. So you're from the beginning to the end of getting the EIN number has to be done in one sitting. You'll have to have a responsible party that is actually applying for the EIN. And at that point, that person's social security number will be put into the system. That responsible person will also be responsible for keeping the information up to date on for the government if you change address or something like that. And after you've had a wonderful career and made a whole lot of money and are going to retire, you're thinking of closing your business. The IRS has to be also know that you are closing this and closing out that EIN number. It will be discontinued from the IRS, and in that way, no one can hack you. So it's important that when you get the EIN and you turn it in. If you stay with the sole proprietor, forget everything I just told you because it won't apply.
All right, awesome. Thank you for that information. All right, so let's jump right into expenses. Can you talk about that?
You're reading my mind because that was the next thing on my agenda. The business, the government looks at a business in this way. You have to have the primary purpose of your business is income for profit. And your activity there has to be a continuity to it and a regularity to it. So you certainly could take a hobby and turn it into a business, but if you don't have a continuity, the continuity and the regularity of the work, it's not considered a business. So the reporting that you have to keep in mind is it has to check off two boxes on this, that you're interested in running this business for profit and that you do it on a regular basis. That being said, the government is most interested in what you make. So all of the income from the business you need to keep records of all of the income. If it goes into a business account, that is a labeled source. The government likes it when you keep things separate from your personal funds. However, in the sole proprietor, there's a little leeway that you can take. You don't actually have to have a separate bank account for your business. In the other cases, not so much. Your tutoring earnings could be the money that you actually get paid, but I've done talks and such that would be part of my business income, and I've been paid with a gift card. Those are all parts of the income, so all of that has to be reported. So when you're keeping your records from your income sources, it's a good idea to label where that came from. So if it's tutoring income, just mark it that way. And if it was a gift card because you gave a talk and they weren't going to pay you for that, but they rewarded you with a $25 gift card or a $50 gift card, label that as well, that it wasn't exactly tutoring money. And your accountant then will be able to discern how that's going to be reported. The IRS has a wonderful idea of making rules and then tweaking them and changing them. So some of the parts that were deductible 3 years ago aren't now, or they'll change the amount that you can take for certain things. So the best thing that you can do is to keep records. Mark what you get. Mark the income. Mark this, perhaps put the student's name on it, or mark it tutoring. You most likely will keep your records online. That's fine. Or you could use the old-fashioned way with just a columned accounting paper. This, if you're a paper and pencil person, that's okay too. But you're there's so many spreadsheets now online, and that everything's been kind of electrically people work with their computers more than their 13 column spreadsheets. But at any rate, the most important thing is that you date and get the amount, and make sure that you have it labeled as to where that income came from. There's a line item on the sole proprietor on the Schedule C. It's on all of them, but I'm going to work with Schedule C because I think that most of us are going to be there, where there's returns and allowances. I think I've only used that box once or twice in all the decades that I've tutored. What we do is provide a service. It's not like a person can put what we sell in a bag and take it away like they do in a store. So it's usually you don't have returns on a service, but sometimes a student might pay ahead and then cancel a lesson, or decide that they can do it on their own, and you may have to pay some money back. Whatever the circumstances, that has to be recorded too, because you actually gave the money back, so you never really made it. So keep track of what comes in and what monies go back out in the income category. Okay, in the so another thing with your income could be interest income that you have from a bank account, and you might have some prizes or awards, something like that. So all of these could go into that the gross amount of income that you'd need. But an accountant is going to it's going to be helpful if you mark what that is, because as the rules change on it, those might go in a different position on the tax return. Your expenses, I don't know if you have any questions at this point. Shall I go on, Gabrielle?
Yeah, you can go on.
Okay. All right. So expense-wise, the form for a Schedule C is pretty clear. They have categories like advertising, car and truck expenses, commissions and fees, and it's just listed on and on. When you decide what business entity that you belong in, and you're committing yourself to that business entity, I would suggest you go online and print out of the form that you'll have to that your tax preparer will have to prepare for you, because then you'll see on there what the expenses are that they're asking about. So the categories on this one are, like I said, they're clear, and they're actually in alphabetical order too. That's a plus. You're not going to need everything that's listed on these. Advertising could be your business cards, or your if you throw an ad in the paper, if you get pens that have the writing on the side, those might be in advertising in that category. I'm going to skip car and truck for just a minute because that's a little more involved. Your commissions and fees, this might be if you hired someone to do something for you and paid them, but business-wise. Maybe you had fees for setting up a computer. If you had any contract labor where someone was doing some work for you and this is business-oriented, you would need to keep track of that. Anytime that you have one of these categories, you want to mark it what it was for. I'm going to skip depletion because this Schedule C goes with any business entity that is sole proprietor. As tutors, we wouldn't have depletion. That would be something like if you were mining and taking the minerals out of the ground, it would deplete the reserve. So you can see how that doesn't even touch what you and I do. There's depreciation. That's another thing where if you buy some large piece of equipment that's very expensive, the government doesn't let you take the expense of it usually in 1 year. They make you take small amounts of it over time. So your accountant is going to need to know that. So like I said, if you just have an expense, when you spend money, just jot it down what it was for. Keeping the receipts is a good idea too, if the accountant would like to look at them. But pretty much they'll be able to tell if your categories are labeled correctly. Employees, that's another whole topic. With somebody starting out, I've done my whole career with no employees at all. It's just been me. And I'm sure that has simplified my life a lot because there are many other taxes, payroll taxes, and reporting that has to be done if you introduce employees into the mix. But if your excuse me, if your business is growing, pardon me, I'm just going to take a sip. Thanks. If your business is growing and and employees are part of the mix, then all the better. But know that anytime you hire someone, there is additional reporting, and you may have to seek the tax preparer again in order to make all the deadlines of the quarterly payments and so forth that come with taking on a responsibility of an employee. Insurance for the Schedule C has to do with like business liability insurance, insurance if you had a building where you owned it. The health insurance is another issue, and that is a different line item. Interest is on here, mortgage interest, and that would be, again, if you bought a building and you were you had a mortgage on it, you can take the interest on it. Legal and professional services is on this form, and that is if you had your taxes professionally prepared for you, or with a lawyer to start up your business. Those expenses can also be taken. Label them because the laws may change and you may not be able to take the whole thing at once. Your office expenses have to do with consumable things like your stationery and the printer ink and that kind of thing. Pension and profit sharing plans. This, you might get into this a bit if you had employees, but there are ways that you can plan for your own retirement. Again, a tax preparer would have to go into the ways to help you with your own particular situation. I'm sure they would be different for each of us. If you rent or lease, if you lease a printer, or if you're leasing some office equipment, or if you rent from someone, that is also deductible. Repairs and maintenance, if they're for business reasons. Let's say your printer broke down, so you'd have to have repairs on that. That would be, just mark it and keep your notes on it. There's another issue here for supplies. And the office expenses and the supplies are two different categories on this. They're both expenses and come off they reduce your income, but an accountant would maybe put things in different spots that you might think, well, if I buy a case of paper, is that a supply or is that an office expense? Just market it as to what it was and get some help from a professional that knows the business better. Taxes and licenses are on this. Many of us have professional licenses that we have to keep up if we're certified. Travel and meals, if you perhaps went to a convention or were out of town for business purposes, you would certainly have to travel and eat while you're there too. And those expenses are sometimes not totally 100% deductible, but if you mark it, your accountant will help you on this. Utilities, if you are paying your own utilities, perhaps that's part of your rent, maybe not. That would be deductible. Certainly wages if you had employees, and then there's a catch-all, other expenses. So your accountant may or may not use that category. Questions so far, or shall I go on?
I don't know if you can touch base on food, meals, like those categories.
Yeah, the the food and the meals. This is something that changes fairly every several years. They do something else with that. Uh, Business meals are deductible, but they might not be totally deductible, 100%. It may be uh, who you take to a lunch if it's business oriented. You will really have to just put the expense down in total and keep records of who was there and why you had this business meeting, and that will help the accountant decide whether it is 100% tax deductible or not, or only a percentage. One of the in that same category, that's why I saved these, because everything that I'm going to talk about now is one of those squishy areas that changes a lot. The IRS gave it and then kind of took it back. Office and home. Many of us do work out of our home. I know I do. And that there is a place where we can deduct for the office and home, but it really comes with a lot of bells and whistles on it that we have to hoops to jump through, if you will. They allow, at this point, they allow for a 300 square foot area. So you're not going to be able to like take your basement and write it off, or go to the largest room in the house. Perhaps it's a spare bedroom. If you use that for an occasional guest, it's not considered to be only exclusively for business. So there are parameters that they put around that in the law that says, no, well, you can't take the whole room. You can only take this much of it. And again, you have to be doing certain activities in that room that are like record keeping or making your phone calls, or perhaps doing a virtual lesson or something like this to have it qualify. So the main topic of the whole thing is to keep your records, write it down, and you may have an opportunity to take a standard deduction on some of these. The office and home is is one of the places where they say, "Oh my gosh, we could take every little expense that you have regarding that office in your home, but there's also this workaround. We could give you a standard deduction, and we're just going to say it's a wash. You might get a little more of a deduction if you figured everything out, but your time might not be worth it." So the office and home and the meals and the travel definitely fall into those categories where sometimes you wonder if the work is worth the effort. Another thing is your auto expenses. And this I'm pretty sure that you'll have these if you go to students or meet your students at the library, or if you go to their homes, or however you work with the travel part of it. Yeah, the form, I will read it to you, actually says that they make you answer a lot of questions on this. And these are really hard to answer if you don't pay attention to this until tax time. They want to know when you placed your vehicle in service for business purposes, the month, the day, and the year. They want to know the total miles that you drove during the year. So what I usually do is at the very end of the year, I remember to mark my odometer from the odometer. I just write it down on my new sheets, because at the end of the year, I close my books on the tax year that's, on the old year, and I'll start new with new sheets for everything for the year that's coming. And at that point, I always look at my odometer and try to find out, what the reading is on there, because the form asks for it. I have messed up a few times over the years, and I sometimes can get the odometer reading off the paperwork when I get oil changes or something. So if you get a car repair, a lot of times that they take the odometer reading on that, and that has saved my life a couple of times. But just so you know, that is on this form. Then they want to know that your business miles and your commuting miles and other. So an accountant can tell you more about the other part of it, but you're going to need to have a listing of the business miles that you drove. And they want it in writing. So I keep a notebook like this, or sometimes smaller, in my car. And when I do a trip to a student or to the library or something that's business oriented, I have been asked to sit in on meetings at schools lots of times, so I'll keep track of that in my book that's in the car, where it's the date, the place that you went, the reason that you went, the business reason that you are making this trip, and how many miles that you drove. Remember, you have to drive back, so that's also included. The form asks, was your vehicle available for personal use off-duty hours? And that's a yes, no. Do you or your spouse have another vehicle available for personal use? It's a yes or no question. Do you have evidence to support your deduction? Yes or no. And lastly, if yes, is it written? I check with your accountant on this, if they would allow it to be computerized. Probably yes, but I'm not sure about that. But I know that if you're audited, it's really nice to see a book in handwritten, because they know that you've kept the journal of it all along the way. They can't really tell if you've recreated it on uh, a computer. So that might be one to check with your tax preparer to see which way is better. Anytime that you go into those squishy areas, what like the office at home, or that or the meals for travel, you're more likely to be looked at, because those are areas where sometimes we don't keep really good records, and the government just looks into that a little bit more. I would imagine that that you'd be more vulnerable in those areas. There's also another part to the Schedule C where you can list other expenses that was not in this laundry list that they gave us before, where we went over them in alphabetical order. There might be something else that is just squirrely with your circumstances at a given time. So if you don't know where to put something, again, just make a note to yourself for what it was about, so your accountant can help you discern. Once you've done, have had an interview with your tax preparer, and you go over these different categories and the different questions, you'll find that from year to year, your business will be similar, and you'll get used to this record keeping, and it won't be quite as daunting.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I know it's a wealth of information for us to take, but you just got to take it a little bit at a time. All right. Well, we are going to wind down. So, Jan, do you have any final advice that you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, I just think that the career that we've chosen, the tutoring career, is so worth the record keeping. I have absolutely loved what I've done all these years, and like I say, that you will get used to the reporting. You'll you may have to just kind of force yourself at the beginning to keep current. I would suggest that you don't let it go longer than a month. Maybe every month you can kind of go back to your sheets and make sure that they're up to date. It's so much easier to do it when it's fresh in your mind. To recreate this in the springtime is just, oh, you just want to pull your hair out. So save yourself, and do it a little bit at a time.
All right. Well, Jan, thank you so much for that advice, and thank you for all the information that you have given to us.
You're welcome.
All right. So, let me put up your banner. All right, you guys. So, if you are interested in Jan's tutoring services, her information is scrolling below at the bottom of your screen. She is all over social media. She's on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram. So definitely follow her on social media. And if you want to learn more about her services, you can go to her website, www.jstutor.com. And you could also email her if you want to pick her brain, if you would like more information. Her email is also scrolling below at the bottom of your screen. But I do need to reiterate that the information that you just heard is pretty general. Everyone has a unique situation when it comes to their taxes. So we highly encourage you to speak to an accountant about your personal situation. But Jan, thank you so much for joining me today. I encourage all of you guys watching to follow Jan on social media, and you can reach out and learn more about her services on her website. So, Jan, thank you for joining me once again.
Happy recording.
Of course.
Happy bookkeeping.
Yes, good luck bookkeeping. Happy
Yes,
bookkeeping.
happy bookkeeping.
Awesome. All right, Jan, I'll place you backstage. And it is just you and me, guys. So, Well, we have reached the conclusion of our episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, wherever you are watching this episode right now, whether that is on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, if you're watching this on our website, or eventually we get to Instagram, please check out our platforms for more videos and clips, and don't forget to follow us. And while you're at it, please let us know what you thought about this episode by leaving a comment in the comment section below or in the comment thread. And as a reminder, this episode is part of the production of A Step Ahead Tutoring Services. So I know you heard from two different tutoring companies. It's all love here. There's no competition. We're all colleagues here. But just for your information, if you would like more information about A Step Ahead Tutoring Services, our information is scrolling below at the bottom of your screen. But I will say our website, www.astepaheadtutoringservices.com. Excuse me. And there's a special promotion going on right now. When you reach out to us and you mention that you heard about us from Hot Topics, we'll give you 15% off 6 hours of tutoring. So I encourage you to get that discount. Again, let us know that you heard about us from Hot Topics, and we'll give you 15% off 6 hours of tutoring. So take advantage of that discount. And I also encourage you to sign up for our email list and our texting list. That information is also scrolling below in our marquee. When you sign up for those things, you will receive additional discounts, promotions, announcements. You'll get the whole thing. So I encourage you to stay in touch with us on our email list, on our texting list, on our social media, wherever you see us, stay in touch with us. All right, so we have reached the ending of our episode. Thank you so much for joining us. And again, I know you heard from two different tutoring companies. We're all colleagues here, whether you use our services or Jan's services. I encourage you to seek out tutoring services if you need it. And again, all of the information that you heard from this episode is generalized. All of us have unique situations. So I, Gabrielle, encourage you to speak to an accountant about your business. And with that said, thank you for watching this episode. I look forward to seeing you at the next episode. Now I am signing off.